Hey guys, I am the 50s Kid and welcome to another video of my series on the braking systems of the BMW E46. If you haven't seen my other videos, I will put a link in the description so you can check them out. But basically all my problems started when I flushed my my brake fluid and changed the rear pads on my car. And I'm not particularly happy with the performance of the rear pads that I installed. I think that the ones I had on there were probably the OEM pads because they really don't wear down as fast as the fronts. They still had a lot of meat left on them, but the issue I was having with those ones is when I would back up in reverse, and just, you know, I had my foot lightly on the brake, they would hoot. You would hear kind of a hooting sound as the vehicle backed up slowly. And I looked around and a couple other people on like the message boards did have that problem, and the suggestion was to go ahead and change the pads. And that did work. That took the sound away. But again, I'm not happy with the performance of those pads, so I am going to change them back just to see if I can get back the performance that I had before. And if that is what happens, then I will probably source some OEM pads or something that people really like and something I get good reviews on, rather than cheaping out and buying the cheaper pads. Sometimes that has worked for me in the past, but yeah, I think, you know, that this is one of the cases where that's not going to work. So I figured why not make a video about it, and so this can be a video on how to change your rear brake pads, and you know, this would apply for your front brakes as well. So this is my little how to change your brake pads video. This is something that anybody can do. This is really, really easy, and so let's get started. Okay, so we're here at the passenger rear wheel, and the reason I'm going to show you this one is because this one has the brake pad wear sensor. So the other side doesn't have that. You only need it on one side, they figure. So I wanted to show you that and how you do that. Not all cars have these brake pad wear sensors. This is actually you know, kind of a luxury feature, I suppose. What most cars usually have is on the actual brake pad, there will be a little piece of metal that is sort of sticking up maybe a couple of millimeters up from the plate right here. And so when this pad material actually wears down to the point where that piece of metal is going to start scraping against the rotor here, and it'll make a horrible, awful screeching sound. So when your brakes are always making that squealing sound, whether you're applying them or not, that's when you know you really, really, really have to change your brakes. But you really never have to change them until you get down that low, technically. So that's just an FYI for you. The first step is to compress the piston in the caliper. Right now this caliper is just on really, really tight, and if we compress the piston, it'll actually give us more room to be able to get this off. And normally what you do is you go into the hood and you remove the cap from the brake reservoir, just so that you know, the air is not being held in there and you have some room to actually push the fluid up. And if there's too much fluid in there, you could potentially like overflow your brake fluid. So it's always a good idea to kind of get the turkey baster and suck out a little bit of the fluid and then top it off afterwards. Rather than do that, I actually want to show you an alternative method, which I'm sure is probably not shown in very many videos. They say what you should do is you should actually bleed the caliper as you're compressing the piston. This actually will force any junk that might be in the piston, inside the back of the piston here, out through into your with the brake fluid. And this also kind of has the added effect of, you know, giving you a quick little bleed if you do need it. So I kind of like this method, and I think I'm gonna do this, like, you know, from now on, because it just seems like a good idea to me. So taking off the cap right there and putting a 9mm wrench, the box end on it, on the bleed nipple, and hooking up my my tubing to it. Again, my tubing goes to just a little bottle, and it's submerged in brake fluid. And I'm going to First of all, you need a clamp, by the way. I forgot to mention that. But you need a clamp that is big enough to, or wide enough to, it's actually so wide that my camera can't get it in frame there, but it needs to be wide enough to hook onto the end of the caliper, the back of the caliper, which you can kind of feel for. There's always there should be some piece of metal you can grab onto, and then you hopefully should be able to hook on this side. You should be able to push on the brake on the back of the brake pad. So that's what you want to do. There's no point in pressing, you know, this part of the clamp onto the caliper right here, because you're not actually pushing the piston in. You need to push on the back of the pad, because that's basically forcing the pad on this side is independent of the caliper. It's not attached to the caliper. So by pushing against the pad, what you're really doing is you're pushing the whole entire caliper this way, and you're compressing in the piston, which is right here. This is actually the rubber boot that surrounds the piston, and the piston is pushing on the back of the inner brake pad, and so you are pushing on the back of the outer brake pad and compressing it. And hold on, gotta get on there like that, and making some room. So in order to do this, I'm gonna have to crack open the bleed screw just a little. I only want it open a little bit so that I can push the fluid out and hopefully not let any air back in. There, you can see how I'm getting a little bit of fluid started. Wish I was able to show you some really dirty crap coming out of there, but as we all know, I've recently bled my brakes and changed the system and or flushed the system and all of that. So I'm gonna close the bleed screw up and back off here. And as you can see, it's now loose, at least loose enough to be able to slip it off. So you can see that we just have a little bit of fluid in the tube. Didn't let any air go back in, or didn't let the fluid drain out and air get back in that way. And I'm going to make sure that that drains down. Looks like it has. Close off the bleed screw because we don't need that anymore. Now it should be a lot easier to remove this clip right here on the very front that kind of holds the caliper in, the brake shoe in, I should say. And yeah, basically, if you just push up on it with your fingers, all you're trying to do is get these two tabs above where they were hooked in. So, you know, play with it, you'll get it out. Now, what we have to do is remove the caliper guide pins. There are two caps on the back. Actually, looks like I already moved the one on the top, removed the one on the top. And they look like this. They pull out. You should be able to pull them out with your fingers. If not, use a little pocket screwdriver. You need a number 7 hex bit, Allen bit. It's good to have it's good not to use like a hex key on this. You need some leverage, a little bit of leverage. So there, knocked it a couple of times and kind of broke it free. So I'm gonna, boom, one shot is all it took there. Basically, you'll feel when you get that pin loose, that caliper guide pin loose. If you want, you can actually take it all the way out. I'll do that you don't have to at all, by the way, but I will do that just to show you what it looks like, to give you an idea. That's all it is. You're gonna need a piece of wire to suspend the brake caliper from, once you take it off. You don't want to leave it hanging from the brake hose, by the brake hose, because that's gonna put stress on the brake hose and that could damage it and you could have a leak and that's gonna be really bad. So just get a piece of wire. It doesn't have to be this kind of wire. It can be, you know, braided wire, the stuff you buy to like hang a picture at Home Depot. You know, that's easy to find. You can find it at Walmart too. I like to hang it from the rear springs. And I'll just kind of twist this around a little bit so that it's there. And I like to make a little hook. First, what you really need to do, on this particular side is remove the wear sensor. I'm going to use some needle nose pliers to do that. Okay, that wasn't as gentle as I hoped it would be, but there you go. You can see that the wear sensor has a little nub on the end of it. Hopefully you can see that. When that touches the brake rotor, that's what sets off the alarm on your dash panel and your dashboard, and tells you it's time to change your brakes. But you can actually drive until you can drive for quite a ways until until this sensor gets set off. Usually most people kind of change their brakes before this even happens, but it's a good thing that it's here. Anyway, now you should be able to take off the caliper. The rear pad is going to come with it because it's held in with this little clip back here. That clip slips into the piston. So here we can basically hang up our caliper. Oh, I hope it's long enough. You know what? I didn't make my wire long enough. So, well, luckily I have this little S-clip also that I brought with me. I'll use that to kind of hang it up. And I'll probably just twist this piece of wire around. You know, whatever works for you. So you can see I've got it hung up, and here's the brake line on the bottom of it, and now it's not hanging down by that brake line. So that's what's good. I'll go ahead and remove the other shoe, and here's something I actually noticed. This is the one I took off, and here's the new ones that I put on, and you can see that this one is a lot longer than the one that I put on. I didn't even notice this when I was changing these before, and well, I think I just kind of solved the mystery of my lack of stopping power here. I must have bought the wrong shoes actually for my brakes. This is like a 330, and I don't know, I must have bought the shoes for like the 325, the calipers that are on the 325, and or the rotors, I should say, they're on the 325. So that was my whole problem there, and you know, well, egg on my face. But you know what? I'm committed to not hiding my mistakes from you guys, and committed to showing you my mistakes so that you can learn from them. So definitely remember to get the right parts when you do things like this. There we go. When you're doing this, if you haven't done your brakes before, if you don't know who's done your brakes before, actually even if you've done this before, see, I know that I grease everything up before I put it on, but I can see that already some dirt's kind of been attracted, you know, in the process. There's brake dust that's involved when you're braking. So I guess it's just a good idea to clean everything off, clean off all your metal surfaces. In fact, I'm gonna put some brake cleaner on the rag. Ooh, looks like I don't have much left in this can, and just wipe at that. That'll dissolve the grease a little bit better than nothing. And wipe that off. I actually know that I have some on the inner surface here as well. Good idea to clean everything off. And I can see like an imprint from the pad on the rotor. I'm just going to clean that as well. And yeah, we took something off. So it's always a good idea to clean everything. These were my original pads, and normally they're going to be probably twice as thick as this one is. But you can see that this still has a large amount of meat on it. I call it meat. It's a large amount of the pad. You can see here's the backing plate, and here is the pad. And basically, as long as you have any amount of pad left, your brakes will work. You can tell where the wear sensor, where the minimum level is by looking at where the wear sensor, the little nub on the wear sensor is, and you can see it's when it gets down to maybe 25% of what I have left. That's when, you know, they want you to change. It would be a good idea to change your brake pads. So I'm okay with running these again as long as they don't have that same hooting sound. I kind of suspect that they will, but right now I'm after better brake performance, you know, to have the proper pad on there rather than, you know, and I'll deal with the hooting until I can source the proper brake pads. So what I want to do is I want to actually lube up all the metal surfaces that are going to touch each other. Right here, hopefully you can see there's a little shiny bit of metal here, and that's the part where metal is contacting metal, and that's the part that you want to grease. You can look around, you can actually see on the on this pad as well, you can see the part that's shiny, hopefully, right there. Whatever part that corresponds to, you can see it corresponds to that area right there where it slides on as the pad wears away. That's the part that you need to grease. That's the biggest part. You'll also just want to grease these other parts of metal that do contact, but the critical spots are always going to be where you see the metal kind of shiny and ground away. That's the absolute minimum that you need to grease. So you can use those little packets of grease that you get from the auto parts stores. I have a tube of grease, and I'm just going to use this, but just brake grease. I put it on the back of I put it on my pinky. And also, I put some on the inside, the whole entire inside of the surface of the caliper here. That's going to touch the outside brake pad. Carefully. I'm going to take them, and again, this one, since it's an old one and I'm putting it back on, you can kind of see, but look on your old pad, see where the corresponding, you know, worn area is, and that'll give you a clue where to put the grease. So again, I'm just going to dab grease on my finger and try to apply it to those spots, and hopefully do it in a way that you can see it. So I'm going to go in there and get it on those spots. And same up here. Pop this pad into the piston here. The other pad, it's a good idea to, I mean, there's nothing really wrong with lubing up the entire surface, but again, I can see where the metal of the caliper was contacting it, and so I kind of just know where to put the grease. And I'll just put a little bit of grease there. It's kind of a waste of grease if you kind of put it in this area because nothing really touches it. But again, it really is, it's okay if you do it. There you can see that shiny surface again in there. Also get some on the pad carrier. But be really careful when you do this because you don't want to touch the rotor. If you do touch the rotor, clean the rotor with brake fluid, brake cleaner, and a lint-free cloth. But that right there is all I need. I'm going to put the outer pad in place. I've got the inner pad inside attached to the caliper already. And you know what? Why don't I just go ahead and put some grease on the back of the pad carrier right here. Just 'cause. Make sure. And we'll slip it on. Okay, what are you hung up on? Oh, it's probably the caliper guide bolt that it actually is. The guide pin, it got pressed down in there. Hopefully you kind of saw that. See how it's right there. It was it's kind of hard to tilt this at an angle to where you can see it, but it was pressed upward, and so I couldn't slip the pad on. So make sure those caliper guide bolts are pressed back. In fact, I'm going to remove this one just 'cause, so it's not in the way. Carefully put the pad back in here. And now I can slip it over just fine. Just like that. And I'll take the wear sensor and pop it back down onto the pad. Just like so. take the caliper guide pins and I'll clean those off. It's always hard to find where the camera is seeing. Okay, I've cleaned those off, and yours are very likely to just be kind of dirty and cruddy, so use brake cleaner to clean them off. So slip that one in too. So I got them both in, and I'll proceed to tighten them. I'm hand tightening these for now because I'm going to torque them. And you know what? You really should have a torque wrench. There's no excuse not to have one. They're about $10 to $20 at Harbor Freight, depending on if you get one with a coupon or not. And so I'm going to torque these to 22 foot-pounds, which is the specifications. So there's 15, there's 20, and yeah, there's 22. Lock that in place. And that's it. When you hear it click like that, you're good. By the way, always remember to store your torque wrench at 0 so that it doesn't become uncalibrated. Put the dust cap back in, or the dirt dust cap. Put the pad wear sensor back in there, like that. Don't forget to remove that hook, your wire, whatever you suspended it with, and of course, not to forget the pad retaining clip or tensioning clip. Retaining spring, tensioning spring. Snap it back in just like that. Remember to put your wheel back on and torque your lug nuts properly to 88 foot-pounds on this car. If you don't know your specs, look them up on the internet. You should be able to find them. Now I'm going to go do the other side and go take her for a test drive.